Last night I had a bright idea. I thought that I'd do some painting or some masking and then allow my painting to dry, and while that was drying I'd work a bit on a second painting, and while that was drying I'd go back to the first one and do some more painting or some more masking, and I'd go back to the second painting and so on, and I'd complete 2 paintings in little more than the time it would normally take me to complete one. So it started off fine, except that after a couple of iterations of this I got stuck on the second painting and just kept on working on that, and eventually went back to the first painting and had to do all the painting drying phases without interruption from the second painting, because that one had been completed. Nevertheless, there are 2 paintings in this evening's release, so I hope you enjoy watching me paint them. G'day, Paul Lyons here from paintings.nz. Tonight I'm painting another tree. It's a tree in Bledisloe Park, and I guess the interesting thing about this from my perspective is that there are little ferns growing off the trunk of the tree. So this is the trunk of the tree here, and there's a couple of other trees over there, so I should say here, between there, and there are little ferns growing off the trunk of the tree, which I plan to paint in, allow to dry, and then put masking fluid over, so that I can then cover the trunk of the tree with tree trunk coloured paint. And the interesting thing from my point of view is whether or not I'll be able to do that successfully without disturbing the masking fluid, without ripping it off. So, as I say, without further ado, let us start on the little fern plants. So I have to go over all of this again with the masking fluid. I'll spare you that. I think that'll probably suffice. Alright, drying time. So I'll turn off the camera while that dries, and also while I put the masking fluid over these areas of green and bluish colours. So see you shortly. And while the other painting's drying, I'm going to try to have a go at painting a second painting, or get started on it at any rate. Will depend on how well the 2 paintings interlace with each other, but we'll see what happens. There's a sort of mare's tail that's a bit harsh. So there's a sort of mare's tail effect in this sky. Alright, so in addition to the sky, we've got hills here and down here, and there's a big flattish area down at the bottom there, and then some grass in the foreground here. So let's see if we can convince this brush, which is full of old paint, to paint the grass. So I'll try and suggest that. There's a shadow from a tree which I'm going to paint in here. Alright, so that gives us a bit of variation in our grass, and it's given me some time for the sky to dry, which, except that bit there, it seems to have done. Just do the hills, so they, and the grassy area. So first wash of pretty much just yellow. I think must be a stream running along there. There's quite a hard edge, which we'll have to add later on at some stage. So here's something I don't think I've tried before. I'm going to try lifting out paint in the area that I want to make darker, which kind of seems an odd thing to do, but what I'm hoping to do is to dry that area out slightly, so that when I add darker paint to it, it will not so these are all, I'm planning anyway, destined to be darker areas. Well, in fact, the way they're working, they could just as easily end up being lighter areas, but that's not what I want. So these are all places where the sun, which is on the right hand side, is not reaching. So having done that, we can now try putting in this darker green in those places, quite dark. So sort of working across from the left. And I know Monet tells us that shadows are blue. But, not necessarily all that blue. Just trying to get a bit of three-dimensionality into this nearby hill. It's looking a bit flat at the moment. Well, it was looking a bit flat, but I managed to three-dimensionalise it a little bit maybe, not as much as I was hoping. This is up in the direction of Akitio, which is go north of Daniverk and turn right till you get to the coast, I suppose. And this is on the way. Lovely beach. Not this. This is a valley. Oh, I think I'm fiddling my Rome burns while I'm doing that. Alright, enough for now. Let us give it a rest and we'll pop back to the other painting. So working on the other painting, of course, meant only putting on some masking fluid. So I didn't think you particularly want to watch that, so I've done that. Come back to this scene, and things are not completely black. I mean, completely black, completely dry yet. I think dry enough to continue working. So as I said before, there's a stream down here, and this grassy area has a couple of levels. So let's put in some shadow to indicate a change in level, and a couple of little child's trees with a nice straight stem and a lollipop top. And see if we can indicate that there are some trees here. I scraped out the green at the tops of the trees. Now I want to put in some lower areas that are a bit shadowy, a bit self-shadowed. They're not in the shadow of anything else other than themselves. Okay, so that really is an awful lot of what I want to do in this painting. There's some fence posts, and again I think I'll use that small brush to do the fence posts. It's not really behaving well. It's only coming to a nice point when it's really wet. Rather short on wires, that fence. It's only got 2. It should be 5. Okay, so now our foreground tree. So I think we need some more dark paint for that. I think we'll have it going up over the horizon line there. I think we might just leave the painting at that point. I did say I was going to try to improve the grassy areas, didn't I? And at the moment we've got white showing through, which I don't really want. So let's see if we can't cover over those white areas. All right, I think it's getting to cease and desist time, isn't it? Cease, to stop doing something. Desist, to not take up doing it again. Cease and desist is not a sort of tautology. Stop. Okay, this is meant to be my main painting for the evening. I don't normally do 2 paintings in an evening, but I'm just giving it a go tonight, and I've actually spent rather more time on the other painting, painting of Akitio Valley, and I just realised that in addition to these ferns, which I want to paint over and whose colour I want to retain, and therefore I've covered them with masking fluid, so that the paint that goes over the top should not affect the ferns. Just realised that I had meant to do much the same thing with a bunch of leaves over here, which are, because they're more or less horizontal, catching the light, so I want them to retain their lightness as other paint goes in and around them. So I'll paint them, let them dry, mask them, and then get on with the rest of the painting. And there are some also over on the very right hand side. The reason I didn't particularly notice them is that although they are light, they're also amongst other leaves that are fairly light, so they didn't really stand out, but I think it's going to be hard to... oh, I might have been able to to work around them, but I think I'll cheat and use masking fluid. They're not just confined to the area where the tree isn't. They can extend over the tree itself. So we'll let them dry. Actually, I'll probably attack them with the hot air gun. And then I can put more masking fluid over the dry paint. This was the reason for doing the other painting, was so that, because I knew I was going to be masking and painting and masking and painting, and I thought, oh well, I'll leave the painting to dry and work on painting number 2, and come back to painting number 1, and then come back to painting number 2 while the next layer of paint or masking fluid dried. And I got sidetracked by doing painting number 2, and I've basically completed that in quite short order. So we'll have to wait around while the masking fluid dries, or, as I'm doing now, use the hot air gun on it. I really do like this fine line applicator. And these are not enormous areas that I'm filling with masking fluid, but I mean, they're not tiny areas either. And because they are actually quite small, I'm not dispensing large amounts of masking fluid. I'm being reasonably careful not to squeeze a large amount of liquid out, because I don't want it going everywhere on the painting, so I'm able to fill comparatively large areas with this very fine applicator. And get well-defined areas filled with the masking fluid, whereas the techniques that I've used in the past, well, first of all, you do not want to use a brush, because you will destroy the brush if you do. Secondly, I've used silicone paint spreaders. So here's a silicone paint spreader. So this is rubbery material on the end of the paint spreader, and that will move the masking fluid around, but it's nowhere near as fine a tool as this is. And then you still have to get the masking fluid onto the surface of your painting somehow. So it's in a bottle, and you have to pick it out and apply it on. It's not an easy process. Oh, that's not what I want to mask. That's not a leaf, is it? That's just part of the structure of the trunk. So you can convince the masking fluid to come off quite easily when it's wet. I hope that hasn't left a residue behind it. I rather fear that it might, actually. But we'll see, and if it has, we'll work around it somehow. Okay, so that means at this stage now I have to do the heat gun treatment again. Okay, I don't know whether you could see it in the camera, but the masking fluid there was boiling because it was so hot. All right, now we've got a bunch of leafy stuff over here. In other words, we have some trees, which is all fairly light in colour. So I'll just use this fairly light green that was being used in the last painting. And again I'll it's not too bad. Might be a little bit darker than I want at the moment. Now the brush is a lot wetter than I want at the moment. There we are, I'm getting a bit of a pattern out of it. Tending to do the same pattern every time, which is a bit of a pity, but if we mess around with it enough, we can probably this enables me to take those leaves that belong to the trees on the other side of the path and to take them right up to the tree trunk without having to paint every individual leaf. Alright, that gives us a feeling of a leafy piece of woodland, we might call it, bush. And let's now add something that will support the vast weight of all those leaves. See if I can get the brush to sit in a nice point. So reasonably dark, but not quite black. So going in and out of the shapes. So we're just glimpsing little bits of branch or trunk or whatever they happen to be, and there's a reasonably substantial trunk there, which disappears behind various things. And that'll probably do it for that section there. I might go over that with a very pale green wash later on, I don't know, maybe not, and I should probably have put some green in on the side of that, shouldn't I? Okay, so we've got these two tree trunks with leaves on either side of them. Let's try to not have a bit of a special case of leaves being lighter right next to the trunk. It's very easy to make halos around things. You know, you bring the main wash or the main splotches of leaves right up to, but not quite touching the tree trunk, and then you've got this line down the side there where this section appears to mirror the shape of this section, so I call that a halo. So we want to avoid halos if at all possible. So what I want to do with these trees is what I was doing the other night with pure colour straight from the bottle, and then moving it around with the credit card. Because it gave, I thought, quite an interesting difference between the reasonably naturalistic looking area there and the fairly bright colours that I was using for the tree trunk. But as I think I said earlier on, the problem is going to be whether or not I can make that all fit in around these areas of masking. So I want these two trees to be quite dark, which they are. Which the first one is anyway. So just very small amounts of the dark paint. That paint just run down the side of the edge of the credit card. And so that tree is, in fact I'm going to move it down that tree is defining the edge of the big tree. Alright, so that's that part done. Now we'll see if we can do something similar on the larger tree, but we want to produce a lighter effect, and we'll see if I can introduce some areas into big young, ugly yucky yellow. Must have been lying around at the bottom of the jar. Let's try again. It must have been sitting in a very solid bit of precipitate. So the red and the blue are very strong colours. I don't want one of those trees diffusing into the other. Yeah, maybe we're lucky. What do you reckon? Doesn't do to rely on luck. Now don't want to scrape too much, especially over the yes, there we go, they are diffusing one into the other. I can push it to the side, but I'm not sure that that's going to help. Yeah, it doesn't do to rely too much on scraping the credit card over the masking fluid, because it's liable to just take the masking fluid off. So I'm hoping that there's a bit of variation between there and there, and we've got a bunch of ferns growing there, and I'm hoping that when I take the masking fluid off and reveal the ferns, that it will read as though there is a darker crevice there that the ferns are growing in. And I'll see if I can produce some sort of edge just there. It seems to have worked out okay, at least while the paint is wet. No, don't do that. I think this is leave well enough alone time, isn't it? That I should just accept the way that the paint has moved. Maybe try to put a bit of dark paint in around the area where the roots are coming up as separate ropes, as it were. It's very, very wet in there, so I think that we will apply, try and wick up some of that liquid. It's very, very thick. If that produces a bit of texture on the tree, that's probably no bad thing. Okay, so we've dried out the tree there. I think I might. I'm kind of inclined to I want some colour in there to so that those leaves are going up to the edge of the tree, so that we don't end up with these white lines. I thought I'd got rid of those when I was doing the masking with those pieces of paper, but clearly that was not the case. So now I can yeah, it's getting very dark, isn't it? Mask that, put some leaves in there, but I also think that I want to more clearly identify the distinction between those two trees, so I think I want to darken this one. One could claim that that this junction between the tree here and the tree here was meant to be a lost and found edge. I think that would be cheating. So let's make that quite dark. I think that's more or less what we're looking for. Now, maybe I'll put in the path at this stage as a sort of stopgap while I think about what else to do. On the right hand side we have more leafy, bushy material. And this is all dry. That's all dry. Not quite sure where that large dark shadow came from. It must have been there all the time, I think, and I just didn't notice it. But I don't suppose it's doing any harm. It's going to be covered in the eventual painting by the frame. Unless I get wildly enthusiastic and start using floating frames again. So this whole area is pretty much full of leaves, which are not really very different in lightness and darkness. So I've already put some in and then covered them with masking fluid, and this time I think I'll dry what I've put in. So the idea is that if I've dried that area, then when I add the next layer I don't end up producing huge pools of paint that will mix together. I think I might just, I was going to do a wash, a light wash over this area just to try and unify things a bit. Just a little bit of white paper left there to show sky showing through. Not as low as that. Not as low as that. And maybe there. Alright. And the same general idea over here. That we have leafage. I don't know what the right word is, leafy stuff. Which I'll just relieve a little bit with this cloth and then dry it. And then put in a bit of dark. One of the perennial complaints of painters is that their colours are muddy. And one of the reasons for that is that they haven't got enough contrast. There isn't enough dark in amongst the middle colours. So these are all middle colours, and I need to get some dark in there. No, it's not dark enough. I need to get some dark in there to make that stand out. And because watercolours dry lighter than the colour you put on, you think you're putting on something that's dark enough, and then it dries lighter. So it's a good idea when you're darkening things to make them darker than you think is necessary. I might add a bit of dark in amongst this lot over here as well, to indicate that down at ground level we have shadows. Well, in fact the original location was very sunlit, but I want to make this a bit more dramatic than that. Okay, so and I've got this one remaining area to fill in. Again, it's just going to be leafy green colours. So let's start off with a light green. So let's split those bristles a bit. Okay, I think time to let everything dry and then take the masking fluid off and see how it works. I'm probably going to put some stems up in here for the leafy support, but we'll deal with that after the masking fluid comes off. Let's just emphasize some of these vines and branches which diffused a bit when I put the green wash over the top. I was in two minds about using masking fluid on this painting because the you're not supposed to, or I've been told that you're not supposed to heat masking fluid because it tends to cling on rather more enthusiastically after it's been heated. And although I didn't use a huge amount in the last painting that I did with masking fluid, it took quite a lot of effort to remove it and raised a very small blister on the end of my finger. If I can get some to remove there, it's better. Just using my eraser. As I've said before, you can buy special erasers for getting masking fluid off. This is not a special eraser for that purpose, although it's a very nice one. But it's doing a sterling job. Okay, so sitting back and taking a proper look at this I think we need to deal with the masked areas, although actually the masked ferns are not too bad. So the tree's disappointingly dark, but I'm not sure that I can do a lot about that. I'm going to have a go at removing some dark from the edge here where it's against the other tree. So I'll just put some water down the side, scrub it a bit and see if I can lift a bit of the paint. So let's help that a little bit, and maybe another bit down there, just to yeah, it gives a bit of shape to the bottom of the tree, doesn't it? If we do both of those. The other thing is that I want to, having made this all too dark really, I'm now going to make some dark on these leaves because they're standing out far too much against the background that they're in amongst. So we're just, having picked up some dark paint from over here, try and use that paint to put a bit of shape on those leaves, hopefully without making them blend completely with the background that they're in amongst. All right, so we're going to leave that at that point and see what we think tomorrow.